just want to do a really brief announcement before we get started about the Rachel Corrie Foundation's annual Peaceworks Conference, which is happening April 8th and 9th in Olympia, which is a Friday and a Saturday. And we're really excited to be able to bring Alice Walker to Olympia to do the keynote on Friday nights. And I'm really sorry I don't have any flyers right now, but a staff member from the Rachel Corrie Foundation will be here tonight with flyers, and we will leave them for you all up front so you can get more information. And I'm going to turn it over to Lee to do the introductions.
All right. Hello. So my name is Lee, and I'd like to start off by saying hello from the Olympia campus. I'm a member of a student group down there called the Midi Solidarity Project, and this talk and the films are part of our 8th annual Midi's Film Festival. So we're very, very happy to be able to come up to the Tacoma campus today and bring Ramzy to speak. I'm very grateful for him to come up. I'd like to throw out a couple of thank yous real quick. Tony Zaragoza, Marlon German, and Giles Odell for helping make this event possible and making sure it happens. So basically the way we're going to do this today, we're going to show a film called Gaza London. Then we're going to have Ramzy speak. We're going to take a short break. Then we're going to show a film called To Know Is Not Enough. And that's on the PBS movement at Hampshire College. And then hopefully if there's time, we'll have a Q&A. So, do a quick intro for Ramzy here. He's a Palestinian-American journalist, author, and editor. He's a former Al Jazeera producer. He's taught mass communication at Australia's Curtin University of Technology, and he's the editor-in-chief of Palestine Chronicle. Ramzy's work has been produced and published in hundreds of newspapers and journals around the world. He's also the author of several books. His latest is called My Father's a Freedom Fighter. And also those folks are interested, you can come up and talk to him afterwards. So, we'll get the film started. Thanks so much everybody for showing up.
كفي وعين
All right, well, I'd like to invite Ramzy to come up and talk to you all here.
morning. Thank you guys for coming and really appreciate it. I also appreciate the efforts of the Rachel Corrie Foundation for the Evergreen all the students. I spoke at Evergreen about, when was it? About a month ago? About 2 months ago. And I went there with this, kind of taking with me this notion that ultimately it's people who make a difference in areas of conflict. It is people, and I'm talking here as people as a collective, who eventually turn the tide this way or that way. It's people who make history. And I also, kind of as a disclaimer, made it clear that this is not my notion. Many historians wrote about this subject before, but American historian Late Howard Zinn, was in particular the one responsible for kind of giving this rise of the people's history notion. Therefore, his writing of American history, people's history of the United States, was very important and essential in kind of allowing us to revisit our understanding of what American history is all about. So instead of looking at the elitist version of history, he looked at it from the bottom up. And in my latest book, actually in all my books, I try to deal with this notion that it is people who make the difference. And in my latest book, Gaza's Untold Story, my father was a freedom fighter. I also try to challenge the way that history in Palestine was being told. Constantly we have been told that history is made by individuals, by political parties, by a group. It's either Rabin or Netanyahu or Shimon Peres or Mahmoud Abbas, Yasser Arafat, and so forth and so on. It is their history that matters, and it's how they relate to the collective history that made the difference. And I always argue that this is not at all the case. This is a very selective, elitist reading of history, and this is why our entire understanding of the Middle East is always tainted with this notion. If you look at Iraq, for example, it was Saddam Hussein, the good guy, the bad guy. Saddam Hussein is the good guy, it's the bad guy. Then we had our version of who is the good guy. Good guys and bad guys swap positions and change. And one is good today, is bad tomorrow, and so forth and so on. And it's a very reductionist and very dodgy, if you will, reading of history, because it's self-serving. We decide and designate who is good and who is bad based on our interests, or perhaps our perceived interests of what is right and what is wrong. Honestly, I've reached a point where it becomes almost sentimental to talk about people's influence on history. It's kind of these gatherings where, the same people, the same faces, and you're telling them the same thing, and people's power, and everybody gets excited, and you just go home. You become kind of like somewhat redundant. Like, really? Is this what's happening in Palestine? It's people who are making the difference? So I can't tell you how exhilarated and how excited I am that this happened in Egypt. There is no better manifestation of people's power. Sorry, even if you compare it to the French Revolution, nothing can tell you what people power is at work as the case was in Egypt. It was absolutely incredible how apoliticized, non-factional, non-ideological, non-sectarian type of movement that took place in Egypt and changed Egypt, and eventually will change the Middle East. And again, this is not sentimental stuff. It will change the Middle East because Egypt had that historical role in the Middle East. Whatever happens in Egypt, good or bad, always has influence on the rest of the Middle East. The rise of the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt in 1928 gave rise to political Islam. Before the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt, there was no such notion as political Islam in the academic sense. And as a result, you have Hamas in Palestine, you have the Muslim Brotherhood in Algeria, in Tunisia, in Jordan, and so forth and so on. And in fact, they had their tremendous influence in Turkey and this kind of liberal or moderate Muslim politics thing that's happening in Turkey right now. Also, whenever Egypt went down, whenever Egypt declined politically, the rest of the Middle East also declined. So Egypt is always kind of a way to gauge the rest of the Middle East. After the Camp David Agreement in 1979, when Egypt broke away from the Arab collective and Saddam did his own thing, the outcome was devastating to the rest of the Arab world. They became divided like never before, and Israel and the United States unfortunately managed to kind of isolate each party separately and disarm them separately and take them out of the scene separately. So Egypt was a key issue here. If you keep Egypt out of the picture, everything is going to be okay. You go after the Jordanians alone, you go after the Palestinians alone, and alone they are very weak. And they are very receptive to compromises, if you know what I mean. So what happened in Egypt was this really nobody, no historian, no one really could have ever imagined that would be witnessing a moment like this. Recently I was in Washington, D.C., and I was talking to American officials there. And one of them takes me on the side and he says, you know, I know what I was arguing is that Egypt is going to be the deciding factor in the history of the Middle East. That was a few months ago. And he said, you know, we have a term for Egypt here. I said, what is it? He said, we call Egypt the wild card. Because we have no way where it's going to swing, this way or that way. And I myself did not really see that it's going to be the people. Not the opposition, not political parties, not Muhammad Barali, nobody but the people who in fact define the value of that wild card. Now Palestine is another manifestation of people's power. The main difference between Palestine and Egypt is what Palestinians are fighting against. The odds are much greater. Hosni Mubarak is a man who had two major sources of power. Very strong security forces that managed everything, and anybody who did not play by the rules was taken out of the picture altogether, tortured, killed, imprisoned, and so forth. And the other, but nobody, Hosni Mubarak or any other dictator, can maintain their power without having a regional superpower or a major superpower somewhere else backing them, financially, militarily. The United States was that power. Without the U.S., Hosni Mubarak would not stay powerful like that. We all knew that. And this is really just fascinating, seeing the changes in the language of how the American administration is dealing with Hosni Mubarak's ousting. Hillary Clinton initially said, we know Hosni Mubarak is very stable and he's a very good friend and his regime is very stable and we have no problem. Joe Biden referred to Mubarak as a very good friend and we will, stand by Mubarak thick or thin. Obama began kind of moving away from that position. The more people began gathering in Cairo, Alexandria, and Suez, and Ismailia, and elsewhere. We are with the people and the regime. I mean, how can you possibly be with both at the same time? The position began changing. When the numbers of the Egyptians began dwindling, they are thinking, hey, maybe Hosni Mubarak will actually be able to survive. Then Obama comes back and he is supportive of reforms. And so we are actually going to go back to business as usual. They are trying to really maintain that position that would allow them to shift and change according to whatever outcome there is. And then when the Egyptian people finally managed to overthrow the dictator, Obama came and he gave a speech that you would think would be given by an Egyptian standing in the Tahrir Square, downtown Cairo. Very emotional, very sentimental. I mean, Martin Luther King type of speeches. I was like, wow, 18 days can make a huge difference in people's perceptions and language and so forth and so on. In Palestine, the odds that they are dealing with much greater. Because this is not about some aging dictator with his two sons who are controlling the country, and it's about how do we get the money out of the country quick enough before the multitudes take over. It's about dollar and cents for them. It's about power. It's about how that power translates financially. It's about wealth. In our case in Palestine, it's different. It's not about power per se. It's not about will per se. It's almost about existence here. For the Palestinians, Israel has this very pragmatic understanding of the conflict. It's either us or them. This has to be purely Jewish state. Therefore, the mere existence of the Palestinians is a threat. Because most of them are Christians and Muslims, and therefore it's a threat to us to have them in our surroundings. They have to be out. So we're looking here at ethnic cleansing. Now, Palestinians, people like me would argue that no, we need to have one state for all of us to live according to the rules of secular democracy, and we have to share this thing. For them, I am an existential threat as well. In fact, I was told, many times by various American neocon Zionist intellectuals that I am calling for the destruction of Israel. I'm not. Of course I'm not. In their mind, I am. I am calling for the destruction of a very sectarian, racial version of a state. They understand that as a destruction of Israel because in their mind, Israel can only be a Jewish state. And any attempt at messing with that paradigm is basically calling for the destruction of the Jewish state. That's our main challenge. And this is what we are dealing with. However, people's power in Palestine has been going on since the 20s, actually earlier than that, when the Zionist movement was being forged in Europe and the early Jewish immigrants began making their way to Palestine, Palestinians began organizing, began defending themselves, and began developing, more importantly than anything, an intellectual discourse that helped them define who they are and helped define their relationship to others, friends from enemies, and so forth. As early as the 30s, Palestinians organized in the general strike of Palestine. It lasted more or less for about 3 years. There was no Facebook, there was no Twitter, there was no social networks, there was no texting. And this is really important because right now if you read the New York Times, if you listen to mainstream media, they are trying to somehow make it sound and look that if it were not for the US, more or less, the Egyptians would have not been free. Which is very, I don't know, morally flexible. I mean, one day you are with Hosni Mubarak, he's our man there, he is helping us stabilize the Middle East, and now we are actually trying to take credit for the very people who overthrew him. But in Palestine, most of our revolutions, we had no such largely American technology to communicate and to organize, yet somehow we communicated and we organized. I grew up in a refugee camp in Gaza. I lived throughout the first Palestinian uprising. It lasted from about 1987 to 1993, more or less. We were under curfew. Most of the time, we were denied electricity and water, were shut off as a form of collective punishment. So you would be curfewed day and night, at times for weeks. At one point, I lived in a curfew of 57 days. Now, imagine your purchasing power is very limited to begin with, because you live in a refugee camp, obviously. And even if you do have power, there's very limited resources out there. And now you have no electricity and no water, and you are all crammed in one tiny little space for 57 days. And yet, somehow, we survived. And we survived, again, collectively. So despite the attempt at isolation, and this is a strategy that defines Israel, whether it's foreign policy, its policy in the region, or its relationship to Palestinians. Really divide and conquer. Isolation, absolute isolation. So you take Egypt out of the picture, you take Yasser Arafat and his cronies out of the picture, you isolate them, and then you break their will, you collectively punish them, and at one point, if none of this is working, you impose a military curfew. So there's nothing more that you can possibly do because people are isolated from their own neighborhood at this point. Because if you leave, you are shot, you are killed, you are imprisoned, and so forth and so on. Yet somehow we survived collectively. Masked men, the people that you see on television that are supposedly the bad guys, masked men were really not for the masked men of our refugee camp. We would have not survived for long. So these men, they would put the kufiya, I'm sure that some of you have kufiyas, they would wear their kufiyas, they would sneak outside the refugee camp at night, they'd collect whatever food that they can, they would come back at night in the middle of the military curfew with Israeli tanks and helicopters hovering everywhere, and they would knock at doors and throw the sack of tomatoes and potatoes and children powdered milk and so forth and so on. We don't know who they are. Most of them don't actually know who live in these houses. But again, there was this kind of, there's this knowledge that without each other we are not going to survive. And this was really empowered Palestinian society all these years. And this despite all the attempts at factionalizing Palestinians, Hamas, Fatah, pro-peace, radicals, moderates, so forth and so on. All these attempts have failed. Because at the end of the day, Palestinians go out to the streets in tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands, waving one flag, and that's a Palestinian flag, not that of Hamas, not that of Fatah. Christians and Muslims, you don't know who's who. People who are dressed up really elegantly and nice, and people who are dressed up in rags and tattered clothes. No classes, no religions, no ideology. At the end of the day, they are a Palestinian collective, and they voice their new wishes right in the street. They write it in graffiti on their walls, and eventually they take charge of everything: the discourse, the language, the political stances. Everything changed the moment they go out in the street. Again, our odds are much greater than those in Egypt, because you're going to have a soldier. I mean, some of you, I'm sure, to read some of the soldiers' testimony, the Israeli soldiers' testimony in Operation Cascade when they attacked Gaza in 2008, 2009. In Egypt, compare this with Egypt, for example, where the Egyptian soldiers would say, we would never shoot an Egyptian. We are there to protect them. We are there. So, and the people would be chanting, the people and the army are one hand, or the people and the army are united. In the case of Israel, they came with clear orders, according to the soldiers' testimonies, which are now published in books, to shoot at anything and everything that moves. Anything and everything that moves. That was the clear order that they had. And they killed and wounded nearly 78,000 people in the matter of 22 days. And not only that, they were actually wearing t-shirts with a pregnant woman and her child, and the whole gun target thing, and funny comments in Hebrew underneath. And so you are not kind of dealing with the kind of mentality where you feel like, if we just go out to the street, we will prevail, we will win. People, it doesn't work that way. Yet, despite all of this, we are still persistent, and we are still insistent that without our collective will, as a people, as a nation, then our fate and our demise is guaranteed. What else do I need to say here? So right now in Palestine, you have these kind of two camps. One is that of the people, the Palestinian people. And again, believe me, it's not a cliche, it's not anything sentimental. They do think and behave as if they are one body and one soul. At one point, they will come and make their presence very clear. They have done this so repeatedly in the past. Some of us are seeing that there is going to be, in fact, a popular uprising in Palestine, hopefully soon. All the signs are falling in place right now. On the other hand, you have the Mahmoud Abbas, the Palestinian Prime Minister, and his cronies, and their main job actually went out of two things. A, they have to maintain their power and their influence on Palestinian society through money and wealth and power. Where do they get their money and wealth and power? You guessed it, Israel and the United States. The US supported militarily, trained them, and against Israel, and the US sends them arms and weapons and so on. And they were always under the impression that this actually works. You can in fact control populations that way. And they are so excited. I mean, I can't even understand why they insist that this is the way you can in fact achieve whatever results you are aiming at achieving. Yesterday I was on Russian TV debating this neoconservative so-called intellectual, and he insisted that if it were not for our military aid to Egypt, he goes, there would have been a bloodbath. This revolution would have not succeeded. And in such twisted ways, he tried to force this argument that actually tells you that by supporting dictators and sending them arms and weapons, somehow you are minimizing damage and achieving stability. This is the mindset, and it's a twisted and tainted and really sickening mindset, considering that millions of people are suffering on a daily basis as a result. One last thing I would like to add is, in order for us to really understand what's happening in Palestine, what's happening in the Middle East in general, we've got to start following the signs of and the behavior of the people as a people, the general public. That's what really matters, really. We need to walk away from this kind of very self-serving, limited, selective reading of history that is always told through the ages. That is not going to give you great. Hosni Mubarak, stable regime, everything is great, everything is good and dandy, yet in the matter of 18 days, he's gone. So something is wrong. Something is fundamentally wrong here. It's either A, we were lied to, or B, the process that led to that understanding was entirely tainted and wrong. And therefore we need to revisit it and have a total rethink. Why is it important? Well, knowledge is really good. I mean, it's nice to always know why things happen the way they do. But those of us who are interested in standing in solidarity with people who need solidarity, at least now we know how to direct that solidarity. Do you direct it to the wrong people, or do you direct it to people who deserve and need support, solidarity, and empowerment? The Palestinian people at this point, they need all the solidarity and empowerment that they need in order for them to in fact carry and enact their collective growth under Israeli occupation. It's really, really nice to be able to stand and talk in a celebratory tone, if you will. I mean, it really is great to finally be able to say, and we have Tunisia, and we have Egypt, and hopefully soon we will have more and more countries that have joined this march for freedom, and hopefully one day Palestine will be there as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ramzy. So instead of doing a break, I'm just going to start this movie. And please feel free to, if you need to take a little break. This movie's on 30 minutes. But I want to make sure that we have time for questions and we get all of your voices in this after the service.
Trustees at Hampshire College has agreed to divest from 6 companies because of their involvement with the Israeli occupation.
All right, so I think we've got about 18 minutes left, so we're going to go ahead and bring Ramzy back up here and do some Q&A. And and I both worked with Test Divest, which is the organization down at Evergreen's Olympia campus that has been pushing for a similar thing to happen at Evergreen. So if folks are more interested in hearing about that, the Cooper Point Journal just came out. They got this article on the bottom that a few of our folks wrote that can catch you up on where that's at. So that bring Ramzy back up and open it up for Q&A.
Any questions? Feel free to make a comment or ask questions.
Yeah, I just want to make a comment. I really like what you said about currently we're young people of America are facing a new gang bill to further isolate us from each other in our neighborhoods. And I just am very much with you. God bless the revolution.
Yes, I did. It's kind of a big open question. I apologize for that. Thank you for coming and speaking to us. I appreciate it. You mentioned something about people, just say people discovering who they are through expression, active collective expression. I'm wondering whether in other countries such as in the Middle East, for example, they look upon the United States and whether we have a real sense of who we are. Some references, I'm making a reference to, for example, making reference to the character of our nation. Just wondering whether other nations, the system reacts to that question. So what are we? What is this nation amongst the community of other nations? Are other nations, do you think, waiting anxiously for us to discover who we are and become more collectively active?
That's a brilliant point. Again, all of this came at play during the Egypt Revolution because, the whole anxious waiting on what will the United States say about this. It was incredible to me, actually, how frivolous or irrelevant the position of the U.S. as a government, as an administration, as a system really mattered to those in Egypt. I mean, living in the U.S. half of my life, I'm thinking constantly, what did the New York Times say? What did the CNN? How is this paper or this columnist is reacting to this? How many people came downtown to Seattle to protest this issue or that issue? To the point that you become engulfed in that kind of, thing where you're under the impression. So this door keeps opening. To the point that I also sat and I was eagerly awaiting the verdict. But then, when I became exposed to Arabic media during this time and started doing interviews in Middle Eastern media, and very few people actually asked me, so what is the response in Seattle? Actually, it's important that the people are determining their own fate according to their own kind of exclusive or unique understanding of their own reality. It seems to me that there has been kind of an overrating of what the U.S. government is capable or not capable of doing or not doing. And people are discovering that it's actually not as important, not as relevant as we thought it was. In fact, I think what's happening in the Middle East right now is related to this very issue. Because when the WikiLeaks most recent cables came out, they indicated so many things, good and bad. Good in the sense that many diplomats actually were looking after certain signs that are part of the declared policies of the United States. Democracy, corruption, this and that. That was nice. That many diplomats were in fact holding themselves accountable to certain ideals. There were other things that were shady and dirty and bad. However, one important element of the revelations of WikiLeaks is that the US is not part of every possible conspiracy to mold and remold the world. This is really, for a long time, this was the idea that was prevailing in the Middle East. When someone says something immediately, CIA, is he related to who's part of what? A new NGO that immediately tried to trace back the money, who's giving them the money, to the point that we became so suspicious of ourselves, and our level of confidence has dwindled so significantly. Because we're under the impression that we are really not the ones who are determining our own fate. Someone else is pulling the string. Now, the unfortunate thing is that the prevailing perception is that America is the government. And that's sad, but that's true. So when there's a protest, let's say, in Yemen or Morocco or Jordan, and they are burning the American flag, they are burning what they perceive that flag represents. And of course, many Americans are not part of the system, they're not part of the establishment. They are not politicized, they are not newcomers, they have no agendas, they don't even watch Fox News. Feel offended, like, why are they burning our flags? This represents so much to us. Why is that being burned? But what they are actually not able to see is that they are not burning the flags because of what it represents to you. They are burning the flag because of what it represents to them. And to them, it represents an American soldier on top of a tank going to marching to Baghdad. It represents an American official handing a check of a large amount of money to another Israeli or sending more F-16s and F-15s to bomb Palestinians and Lebanese and so forth. That's what they are burning. You see what they do? So there's an issue of perception. Now, this type of video, I'm sorry about the quality of the video. I'm not responsible for that. Lucas is responsible. But there's one really important element about that video, that type of activities in Baghdad. It's not just about breaking away or divesting from Israel. I mean, that's very important. It's not just about the sense of solidarity that we as people are not just sitting idle and not doing anything, we're actually being part of change. Not just about, it allows us as so-called ordinary people or average people to discover our own innate power, the ability to mobilize and to make a difference, small or big. That's very important. But one essential element about it is that is going to be reported, or it was in fact reported on Al Jazeera, on Al Arabiya, on Ashraf al-Awsat, on Al Hayat, on numerous media in the Middle East. Here, maybe it wasn't even mentioned in any mainstream media when this actually happened. In the Arab world, this is mainstream news. This is breaking news. And then people are going to look and, wow, so this guy is actually Jewish and he is being part of, he's leading this. Or this guy was a soldier in the Israeli army and he lived it. It changes a great deal because it allows us to open up a margin. It's still small, but hopefully it will define the prevailing discourse in the Middle East in the sense that, yes, America is not against us as America, as a country and a nation and flags and children and elders and all segments of society. There is a clique here, an elitist, politicized group of people who are self-seeking. For them, it's about money, it's about power. They look at the Middle East map and they think of Tunisia and Egypt as just two spots on a map, and they keep asking me that question as if Arabs are this kind of predictable group of people that, okay, Ramzy, so Egypt is out, who's next? It's really very simple. And no, this is not America. And that's one thing that I constantly, and I'm sure that many other activists and writers who have experienced the real America, who've been in situations like this, and will go back or speak in the media and say, no, this is not the real America. This is not what America represents. These people represent themselves and their narrow interests. And one statement that I've always made is that if Americans are so polarized, they are so innately anti-Arabs and they want to kill and burn and destroy, then why propaganda? Why is the US government is investing hundreds of millions of dollars annual basis to propagate their own ideas to their own population, and the population is so polarized. Your hate of Arabs and your colonial interests are so inborn in you that you don't need anybody to impose or try to deceive you in any way. America, and this is why the work of Noam Chomsky will always be so very vital, in the sense that he tells us about how consent is being manufactured. How we are being told that Saddam Hussein was involved in 9/11 and any man with a beard is part of Al-Qaeda, and all that's nonsense. And it's so important now. This is the part that I cannot be part of. You have to be part of that, which is forming your own identity. And I know that I'm not saying that in any degrading fashion, as if there is no American identity being formed. There are many identities that are being formed. And the question is, how do you channel all these energies, all of this power, to be able to actually make a difference as far as your country's foreign policy in the Middle East, or not even at that mega scope? I mean, it could be at small, localized version of making a difference. These kids managed to divest in their universities, in one university, and that's all that they are able to do. I think that's enough. Because my responsibility is to change my immediate surroundings before I do anything else. If we are all able to do that, we have to be
Thank you for coming, it's very, very fun. Early in your first talk, you said that you represent, or your viewpoint was that you want to share the land. I believe those were your words. And that is your viewpoint, and as I understood you projected that viewpoint onto the Palestinian population. So, are you moderate? Where do you fit on a scale? Where does this viewpoint fit on a scale? On a scale, I don't know, acquiescence to extremism. Where does the share the land viewpoint fall?
Well, actually, I'm not going to even hold myself accountable to this whole extremism moderation paradigm. This is an American foreign policy invention to divide the Arabs into the pro-Iran, Syria, bad guys, Egypt, the good guys. Of course, the good guys are actually the bad guys, and the bad guys are not all that bad, but it's just very confusing. So I'm not going to be part of that. I think any writer, any intellectual, any person who is involved in trying to kind of communicate and convey ideas, especially if he deals with history, he's kind of always he feels stuck. I feel always stuck, between my personal interpretation of things and my ability to convey things the way they are. And I constantly try to make that so very clear. So if I'm analyzing based on my best ability to see the situation and see it. I might be right, I might be wrong, but at the end of the day, I'm an Arab. I'm a Palestinian. I am from Gaza. It's my people who are being seen as radicals and this and that. And there is no way that I can remove myself entirely from that situation. Now, I might be able to communicate, to kind of tell you, I can perhaps prove to you why I think that the one-state solution is the only possible way of dealing with the current conflict in the Middle East. It's really not that complicated. What really complicated the situation is the fact that Israel has created so many new realities in Palestine that it becomes so difficult to reverse these realities. You can't, at this point, Palestinians and Israelis are so involved and so intertwined in their everyday life that removing them from one another without leaving any traces and no leftovers is almost impossible. I know you saw the map of the green line and where the wall is going, but that actually doesn't tell you a great deal. What is more important than this map is that the so-called bypass roads, Jews-only bypass roads, they actually go through, they are zigzagging throughout the West Bank, that if you actually include them in the map, and I know you can actually see this online if you do a simple search, you would see that the West Bank are tiny little dots, and the largest of which would be like the area around Syria or Ramallah, but the rest is so divided that Palestinian villages are divided from one another, divided from major towns, divided from every possible border. Israel is 2/3 of its water from the West Bank. It is a huge issue. Israel is not going to let go of the water. It doesn't go over the water for them. Exposing themselves, making themselves so very vulnerable. So they want the land, they want the roads, they want the water, they want the trees, they want the mountains, but they don't want the people. And therefore, they end up living in these So what do we do about this reality that was created by Israel itself? I would be an extremist if I would tell you, again, I don't like these terms, but if I must subscribe to it, I'd say that I'd be an extremist if I would say, I want all the Jews to go back where they came from. I mean, that is an opinion that many Palestinians take. This is my land in 1948. Nobody existed but me. It was a Palestine. And there was one map, and then Jews came from all over the world. They colonized my country, and they start driving our population out. That might be seen as an extremist view. That this will be the way things were 60 years ago, and I will reclaim my land. It would be a very moderate view, actually, in Palestine, to come and say, you know what, this is the reality. Lots of bad things have happened, but the fact is, you have a third generation Israelis living in this land, and we're born in this land. Maybe there's a way we can remove all the walls, and all the borders, and all the bypass roads, and just open up the country so that Muslims, Christians, and Jews could in fact live together, and perhaps over time develop a concept of a nation around it. I really don't see any way around it without one party paying a very heavy price. And at this point, under the two-state solution, the Palestinians are going to pay a very heavy price. And then we might claim that in fact there has been peace, and maybe another also agreement is going to be signed, another major handshake. But at the end of the day, as long as the concept of justice is denied, Palestinians will continue to rebel, and the conflict will carry on.
First of all, thank you for coming. I'm going to start by, I have a question for you. I'm going to start by saying the word both here. I may not agree with what you say, but I would like you to have the right to say it. A couple of things that we can both agree on. First of all, Amnesty International, we can both agree is a nonpartisan in New York, and Amnesty International said that 1,400 people were killed in that unbelievable massacre, because that's what it was. But Amnesty International reported an independent investigation of that. And they're saying that, you said in your quote, 78,000 people were killed.
No, I said killed and wounded. 5,500 were wounded, 1,430 were wounded.
And then also you alluded to the fact that the American propaganda machine. First of all, I want to preface this by saying either pro-Palestinian, pro-Israeli, I'm an American student, father, okay? And I just believe in pro-truth. So I'm going to ask you about what role do you think the Hamas and Hezbollah with their role should be?
That's the part of me as someone who's kind of trying to see things from a historical point of view. But it's very. I know it's easy for someone to come and say, I condemn this, I agree with this, I disagree with this. In my opinion, this is really unequal. What really matters is why things are the way they are. This is the only way that would actually allow us to kind of devise a roadmap that would allow us to revisit this whole subject and change reality in such a way as to go back to the way things were. So why do we have Hamas? Why our Palestinians are divided between the Hamas camp and the Fatah camp? Now this is where the American media propaganda comes in. Propaganda comes in when they want to tell you that this is about Islamists who are fighting the secularists. Secularists being Hamas, being Fatah, and they are moderate, and they are pro-American. And we have the Islamists who are, religious zealots, and they are anti-American, and that's where Fox News comes in, and then they start mixing pictures. You see some Mahmoud Zahar with a beard, and then the next segment is going to be Ayman Zawahiri, the second man Al-Qaeda, also with a beard. You see the connection, Al-Qaeda, Hamas, they are all the same. That's why propaganda is very, very confusing. In reality is Hamas Hamas is not Hezbollah. Hamas is a national Palestinian movement. Why did they take on a religious ideal? Again, that's an entirely different culture. Islam for Palestinians is just a part of everyday culture. It's not like here. Like one thing that I noticed when I first came to the U.S. Someone would introduce it. Oh, she's a Christian. Initially, I thought all Americans are Christians. I mean, that has got to be the case. I mean, aside from the minorities who are not. But if you are born into a Christian family, naturally you are Christian. In our culture, that's the case. My uncle was a communist, but he was Muslim. I mean, you see what I mean? It's just part of the cultural identity. We are Muslim. That doesn't mean that we are Muslims in the sense that we want to enact a Sharia law and we want to see, women being, subjected and all this kind of extremist radical interpretation of what is religion all about. What really matters about Hamas, in fact, is the political platform that allowed Hamas to come in. And it was a time that the U.S. was courting a group of Palestinian leaders in order for them to sign an agreement with Israel. So it took them a while. Finally, they got them to agree to the Oslo Accords of 1993. Complete detachment from what the Palestinian people at home and in the diaspora actually want. They really thought, and this is another racist perception of Arabs, we always want a strong but moderate leader. One person is enough. Hosni Mubarak, Yasser Arafat, that's all we need. Strong but moderate, meaning a friendly dictator, someone we can do business with. So they basically isolated the strong but moderate Palestinian leaders. Of course, everyone is running his own company and he has his own NGOs and their foreign bank accounts, and suddenly the guy that barely can afford buying a car is now owning several hotels in the West Bank and Gaza and so on. The result of that segment of society was a lot of corruption and a lot of disillusionment amongst many Palestinians who did not really sign on for anything. I mean, they were not part of the Oslo process. They did not want to see their society being infiltrated and corrupted in such a way. So there was a shift and a turn. We need an alternative. What were the available alternatives in Palestine? You had the socialist movement in Palestine. As wonderful as they have been and as articulate and eloquent as kind of like on the margin of the mainstream. The mainstream Palestinian society has been so influenced and centralized around the mosque. Hamas is the mosque. Over time, Hamas, which was really, did not start as a political movement at all. In the 70s, Hamas was not Hamas, they were like a branch of the Muslim Brotherhood. They focused on health care centers, the schools, the kindergartens, hospitals, and that sort of thing. Over time, they had the critical mass needed to establish a political movement. They did, and the rest of it is history. It's a long subject, and I discussed it in my books. But really, at this point, Hamas is kind of reflecting the general opinion of the Palestinian people. If Hamas, whether it's Muslim or Christian, if they deviated from what Palestinians perceive as their prideful demand, Hamas will end up losing its support amongst Palestinians who would be seeking someone else. So it's really not about Hamas per se, it's about what Palestinian people are actually seeking. I'm sorry, there's
one last question. How would you respond? I mean, Amnesty International's response and Operation Cast Lead was a response to the bombing into Israel.
Actually, I'm not sure what Amnesty International press release you were reading, but the ones I read, it was very consistent with the Richard Goldstone report, which basically saw possibility of war crimes committed on part of the Palestinians. But if you read the Richard Goldstone report, which is the most the greatest indictment so far of the Israeli crimes in Gaza, you would find that a very tiny segment was dedicated to Hamas's crude missiles or whatever, and the rest of the 586 pages, if I remember the number correctly, were really dedicated to the Israeli war crimes. I think Amnesty International has been more or less consistent with that.
We need to move on to would like to begin the give back? Tommaso, please.
I wanted to give a give back a while when you stand up there talking. And I wanted to tell you that I'm very happy. Because we stand on a foundation of blood. And Indians, slavery, everything. What you want? And it's all about economics. It's about money. We're not the road. Because we don't have clean media. But if we had clean media, and we had the right to speak, of course you would be struggling as much. We're just as controlled as you're controlled, as the market is controlled, and keep on going. The only thing we can do is keep on talking about the injustice that's happening daily. But even that is being censored on Twitters, Facebooks, and whatever else that we try to put together. I talked to this our president, he got knocked out twice, 3 times, because he's talking about coronavirus. Look at this one. It's economics. It's not racism. It's not about religion. It's about money. Those who have and those that do not. Our USA is now attacking our poor people. They're attacking health care, Medicare, Social Security, Veterans Affairs, everything. But the one thing they need to back off on, and that's the military. But I don't hear that. I hear that we're being subjected to as much suffering. But I would never want to be put a budget. Because at least we have somewhat of a fighting chance because we're standing behind thieves, robbers, and murderers. All right.
I just want to thank you very much for the presentation and clarity and detail. I gave you quite a bit
Hello, I just wanted to thank you for coming here and providing this, information here today. I just wanted to say, in terms of radicalism and whatnot, you expressed earlier that a real radical approach would be to say that this was our original land, and everybody they can pack their bags and leave. I feel like as I try to connect, that scenario to what's going on here, I feel like the whole issue of illegal immigration, the Hispanics probably feel the same way, about America. And so we're, it's kind of hard to draw that line between what's considered or interpreted as radical or what's not, because you're just expressing the truth or, a belief that's between your people feel. But I just wanted to say that I think that this information and this is, that your presentation is much needed within the conversation of this whole entire debate about Israel and Palestine, because, we don't really hear about the Palestinian side, and if we do, it's distorted, through biased media or whatnot. And I do agree, that America, they do have a big old propaganda campaign going on. And fortunately for me, I'm taking a propaganda class right now. So, you're right on about that. Some people might disagree, but, we're learning about the United States Information Agency, which is also, big propaganda agency. They were probably very influential, in that whole crisis that's going on between Israel and Palestine too. So I believe that, you're right on based off the perspective that you're attacking it from. And I'm able to empathize and see, look outside the box, so I definitely empathize with you. Again, I just wanted to thank you, on behalf of me and the students, thank you for, coming to Evergreen and providing this information.
I'd like to say thank you for coming as well. So much of what you shared with us resonates with me as well. 2 points. The situation in the Middle East will be resolved by the people of the Middle East. And another point that may not be as popular is that the Holy Land shouldn't belong to anyone. when you begin to learn to share it all and let the walls come down, I think there's an opportunity for a solution in that area that will be just for all of the people. Again, thank you for coming.
I just wanted to say that I don't want to talk about politics or anything else. I can feel your heart and your character. You have an intimate relationship with the spiritual axis of peace. I've heard that before from Nelson Mandela. When he was released from prison, they asked him what was wrong with the apartheid. He said there's nothing wrong with the apartheid. There's no right and wrong when it comes to human relations. There's only a difference in perception of reality. And I see that in you. A lot of people talk politics and see the difference. What I've read in a lot of my classes, I see the suffering sometimes is by big business or interest that has the power. You don't have an interest in the power. You have an interest in peace.
A continual coming back to a place of interconnectedness. And even when people in my beloved community try to kind of dissect and figure out, because as Americans, we are so drenched in this need to divide and polarize every single thing into either or, you kept coming back to the connection. And when you did that, it made me think of all of the struggles that we have on the entire planet. Like, if you support empowering women, then all of a sudden you're anti-man. Or if you support empowering or working for racial justice, then all of a sudden you're anti-white, or whatever all that bullshit is. I want to thank you so much for the spirit and the heartfulness, and I'm shaking because I'm full of adrenaline, and I'm very moved and inspired by your love and your presentation to us. Thank you so much.
But I really wanted to I loved how you just brought the significance of what was said was bringing people together and everyone becoming more aware of what's really going on. It's just having that passion that you have, and people are trying to even break things apart from you, but you still brought together the same conclusion of togetherness and peace and love and the unity, and it was just it's great.
Thank you so very much for coming today. I'd like to express the gratitude of the faculty for your being here. There is another story in the Middle East, and you told it very well. So very often we don't see the other side of the coin. We too we're steeped in propaganda, and we think international NGOs are unbiased, when the truth of the matter is they have a vested interest in presenting one side of the story. For an example, with Amnesty International, for all its work in human rights, I remember when African Americans tried to get it to take a stand against what was happening to us in our oppression, and it did not. So that led me to understand that the front that is presented is not necessarily what's under the surface. There is another story, and it takes the people who have been there, who have walked in those shoes, to bring it to us. You have done that very well, and I thank you.